Hey everyone, my guest today is Ryan Spahn. Ryan is a Drama Desk award-winning actor and writer. Some of his select theater credits include Richard II, The Antiquities, Jordans, Marry Me, Good Enemy, Jane Anger, Summer and Smoke, Gloria, and many, many more. Some of his many TV and film credits include Subliminal, which will be coming out soon, Zero Day, Elsbeth, Modern Love, Succession, and Chicago PD. Ryan co-wrote the feature film He's Way More Famous Than You and wrote the play inspired by true events. Ryan is a Juilliard graduate, and little known fact, he was the first teenaged Borg on Star Trek Voyager. Welcome, Ryan, to the podcast.
Oh my God, thank you for having me.
It looked like you were hiding while I
Well,
was reading that. What was
it
happening?
it was two things. It was both it's wild to hear. I think my biggest spiral when I'm doing a show is the email that says send us your bio.
Yeah.
And whenever that is requested of me, I have such an existential moment with it. So hearing it read back to me sort of was that feeling again. But also I think I was looking down because I'm such a big fan of yours. I think what you're doing is so important and special. And I remember years ago, my friend Wyatt suggested your podcast, and I listened to it and I found your conversations really insightful and interesting. And I found you really insightful and interesting. And so I think it's a combination of both being on your show, but also just hearing my bio being read to me.
Well, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, listeners all over the globe, you guys understand that is such a thumbnail sketch of this human's talent and creative output. I mean, it is found everywhere in the ether of our community, both in New York and LA, and together with Michael Urie, who Ryan lives with. Um, they're just constantly either making things on their own or making things together. So for people who kind of dream of being in a creative partnership, I mean, we can start like as of 2 minutes ago, the last play you did, Richard II, the Red Bull Theater production, another thing that you guys got to do together. Um, but I've been thinking about Shakespeare so much, who you remind me of, because I saw Hamnet last night. I'm late to the party, but I saw it last night and I was thinking about like writing and language and in looking at your bio and sort of deeply diving into your life the last few weeks as I prepared for this. I cannot believe how many sort of worlds of and genres of writing that you sort of participate in all the time, not just as an actor, but as a writer. And so, can you indulge me and go back in time with me to sort of your own beginnings as a creative person and sort of the influences and where you grew up and who was in the house with you and where this sort of impulse to tell stories in all sorts of ways was born?
Sure. What a thoughtful question. Grew up I was born in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware, and then moved to Detroit when I was probably 5 or 6. I came from a broken home, which I think which I know caused me to sit in my room a lot and be sort of with myself and my imagination. And I didn't fit in really at public school with the kids in my hometown of Troy, Michigan. And so I just would go to school and then come home and sort of hibernate in my room. And I didn't even realize at that age, but I started writing probably around then. And I would just get really into school essays or letters that I would write to people like family members, or later on when I went to boarding school, I sent myself to a boarding school and I would write letters to my sisters or to the friends I did start to make as I got a little older, and they would be sort of extensive and very thoughtful. And I think I was also, high on myself with how I'd figure out how to word things. And so I think that that sort of sparked all of that. And then as I got even older, I was so influenced by, the early films of Kenneth Lonergan and um, Greg Araki and uh, I think I just started to drift towards screenwriting as I moved to Los Angeles, and I read that Julia Cameron book that everyone read, The Artist's Way, and
Right.
that got me writing pretty consistently.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
first of all, very few people on this podcast have, and I think I can quote, got myself to boarding school. So you were obviously like incredibly motivated to sort of change your situation and understood like the steps that needed to be taken at a young age to get yourself there.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I had gotten a subscription to the magazine Entertainment Weekly when it was a physical magazine, and I remember reading an article on um an actor and he had gone to Juilliard, and I was so interested in Juilliard then. I was like, what is this school? I didn't really know much about it. So I called Juilliard and spoke to who I later realized was Kathy Hood, who still works at the school. She's worked there for a very long time. She's sort of who you first reach when you call the drama division. And she suggested this school called Interlochen, which was in my state.
right.
And she said to try to go there, that a lot of the kids from that school end up at Juilliard. And so then I called Interlochen and explained my situation. My home life was in sort of flux, and I it was really hard to be at home, and I just didn't see a way out, both at school and at home. And so I just sort of fast tracked myself to this school by writing a letter again, and like handwritten letter, sending them my tax return, which was $100, asking if I could get a scholarship. And then I ended up going to school there for 3 years.
How old were you when you went there?
I was 15 to 17. I
Okay.
was 10th, 11th, 12th grade.
And when you finished there, did you go to LA first? Did you go right to New York? Like what happened
I
after?
After that, I think it's called, is it called leagues? What is the thing that everyone does where you're auditioning?
Audition.
Yeah, you're auditioning for like the 60 schools or whatever. I did that in Chicago. Our boarding school drove us in a bus down there. And I remember thinking if I didn't get a full ride to some school, I was not gonna go to a BFA program because I just couldn't afford to pay for it. And I did not get a full ride to the three schools that I got into. And so I just moved with my friend who was going to USC to Los Angeles, and I lived there for 10 years before relocating to New York.
And did you come here for Juilliard?
I did not. I came here. I started doing a lot of commercials in LA, which allowed me to let go of my waiting tables job. And then I started doing regional theater because LA theater, I don't know if you've experienced it. There's some really incredible stuff happening in a place that no one knows exists. And so no one's seeing it, no one's attending it. The only people that are fellow theater makers in Los Angeles. It does has no it's not part of the zeitgeist at all. So I started doing plays with those directors regional, and that brought me to New York. I moved with my friend Brooke Bloom, who then later introduced me to Michael when I moved to New York. So she's sort of responsible for both moving to New York and moving Michael into my life.
That's incredible. So
Yeah.
that your breakthrough in terms of like in the business is commercials. Like that's the beginning of,
Yeah, I think my first time where I realized, well, when I was a kid, my first job I ever got, wow, now it's really crazy to talk about. I started doing auditions when I was probably 13 or 14. I found a book at the library that said, you know, here's all what a manager's or whatever. And I just started cold faxing because back then it was fax machines. I would just fax these offices that there were two acting agencies in Detroit. And so you could sort of be with as many as you wanted to be. So I was with both of them. And then my first job I got was a extra in a commercial, but then I got upgraded to a principal because they liked what I was behaviorally doing in the background. And so got my SAG card and I got paid a lot of money. And then I got a one line part in in a feature film that was shooting with it starred Claire Danes, and the other extra in the scene was Kristen Bell. So I would find myself doing a lot of stuff with Kristen Bell early on because we both were from the same hometown. And so that was sort of my moment with like understanding how you get a job. But then financially, it was definitely commercials when I was
Yeah.
older.
So what was the decision to go to an acting program later?
Um, this business is hard and it's painful and it's lonely and it's frustrating and it's exciting and it's all of these things. And I think from speaking for myself, as I was getting older, I never, I still sort of face this. I don't really look my age. And so I found myself in a really weird window where I was 28 years old, but I didn't look like that. You wouldn't buy me as a dad, but you definitely don't need to see me in a high school. And so I didn't really have a place. And I was having a hard time knowing what the hell to do, basically. I didn't know how to move things forward. And I was considering, you know, other things. I started applying to just local community colleges on whims and just sort of waiting to see what to do. And then I woke up one day and Michael, we'd been together 2 years at that point. He was frustrated for me, and so he had filled out my application to Juilliard. And he said, I went to this school and it changed my life, and I don't know how to help you in this moment. And so I think you should just write an essay and memorize a monologue and just go to this audition and see what happens. And so that's how I ended up at Juilliard. But what was very funny about that too is that he had to click parent or guardian in order to access the application.
Yeah,
And this guy, Jerry, who Chef Niski, who worked with Kathy Hood and still also works still in the drama division,
yeah.
I was like, Jerry, you gotta take Michael off as my parent or guardian. He's getting all of my, grades or progress reports, whatever they were called. He's getting all of my like parent teacher conference things, like whatever the thing is, whatever the school is sending to a parent, he is getting. And could you remove him from that? And Jerry was like, oh no, absolutely not. I am not. He thought it was the funniest thing to leave it. So Michael's listed as my father during my time at school.
Wow. That is fascinating. I feel like that would be a great name for a production company, like Parent Guardian.
Oh yeah, that is good. That is
Guardian.
good.
That's so wild. What class were you in? What number were you guys?
I was group 43.
Your group 43. And is there
Hmm.
anyone like still in your life from that group that
Oh
my
yeah.
peers would
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh, I love their work too.
Like actors you might know
Mhm.
who are in my group. Um, let's see. Yeah, I mean the actors who are currently like doing stuff. Let's see. Alex Bro is in Stranger Things, both on Broadway and the final season of it on TV. He's randomly in both Stranger Things. Alex Sharp was the Tony winner from Curious Incident. Uh, Betty Gabriel, she's been in a bunch, but she famously was the maid in Get Out. Um, Claire Sebers, Denai Esperanza, Austin Smith, he was original cast of Hamilton.
A lot of people.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot.
brought up, sorry. I brought up Shakespeare at the beginning only because Richard II is is like the last thing that you did. And I
Mhm.
know that I would imagine you do a Shakespearean monologue when you audition for Juilliard. Is that correct?
It doesn't necessarily have to be Shakespeare, but it has to be classical. So it's in either some kind of verse or a really dense text, but most people do Shakespeare.
So when you were at Interlochen or when you were a younger person and sort of began studying to be an actor, did you study Shakespeare and did you sort of fall in love with it and get it, or did it, or not?
I would say I still don't get it. But I do love it. It's really hard. Um, we were given. yeah, we had to do Shakespeare in 10th grade. In 10th grade, I was cast in Pericles. We did that in my school. And then the next year we did Two Noble Kinsmen. And then the next year we did Much Ado About Nothing. So each year I did a full production of a Shakespeare while at Interlochen in like 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. And then um, when I moved to Los Angeles, the first two professional theater jobs I got were two separate productions of Romeo and Juliet. And then I didn't really do Shakespeare for a while until I got to Juilliard. And then
Did you
after
have a great experience there?
at Juilliard,
Yeah.
uh yeah, I mean, I'm sure you must have heard what it from somebody what it's like. It feels a lot like they call it jail yard as sort of a joke, and it's because you do feel like you surrender 4 years of your life to something that is inside of a windowless building.
Yeah.
And you don't have time to access your feelings about what you're going through. You only have time to just keep going and keep trying to do your best. And every teacher demands the best from you in each class, and every teacher's methodology contradicts the previous teachers. You have to sort of like code switch with like whose room you're in and how to navigate who's what the teacher's needs are. And so I think when you're going through it, it is monumentally emotionally taxing. And it isn't until you're out of it and the marathon is over that you start to get some distance and you start to realize the what you did enjoy about it. Because it is very hard to enjoy it in the moment that it's happening.
And are you looking at Michael slash parent slash guardian whose idea this was, and going like, this was a horrible idea, or
I do remember once
torture
I
me?
was
Like,
I do
what's
remember
happening?
once I remember once during third year I was doing I think I was doing the oh gosh, what play was it? I was playing Toby Belch in Twelfth Night, and which is, if you don't know it, it's a huge part line count wise, but it's a huge part physically. And I am not a built large person, and so they gave me like a big like what they called a fat suit. They gave me all this stuff, and they just put all this character on me, and I had to sort of figure it out. And it ultimately was probably my favorite thing I've ever worked on. But the process in getting there was so hard that I remember one night I was so frustrated about it. And Michael stood up and said, he screamed, "This part is tearing our family apart," and then walked into the bedroom. And I remember thinking, okay, I have to have my meltdowns about what's challenging in my school, not in my home.
Right.
But I remember just him vividly responding to how fraught I was over elements of the school. And it's because you don't have time to process it. You don't have
Yeah.
time to process what's happening.
Yeah. And were you writing? Did you continue? I mean, it sounds like you're so busy and so raw during that experience. And also, I'm sure, like bonding in these incredible ways with so many people who you will be, family with forever because you went through the war together. Um, were you still writing while you were there and sort of creating work for yourself?
Yeah, prior to school, I had been writing with a writing partner in LA named Salome. We wrote this film called Woven, and we were trying for years to get it made. And I moved to LA. I moved from LA to New York. She stayed in LA, and she continued to produce it as I went into drama school. And then the year before I started drama school, my first year in New York, I became friends with Hallie Pfeiffer, and we started writing together, and we wrote a film. We wrote He's Way More Famous Than You, which you mentioned at the top. We wrote that together. And then I wrote a separate film called Grantham and Rose, sort of on my own time, again, before school started. But then the timing of a lot of things ended up meaning that between my first year In my second year, we shot He's Way More Famous Than You. Between my second year and my third year, we shot Grantham and Rose. And between my third year and my fourth year, we shot. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. Between my third and my fourth year, we shot Woven.
How are you financing all these things? It's really hard to like do that.
Um, yeah, He's Way More Famous Than You was financed because Hallie, I was friends with a producer who read it and was like, I want to do this. And so he had access to the
People also what it's about because it's so hilarious and it's filled with like the most extraordinary cast and Michael directed it, but also tell them because I want everyone to like there's got to be a way for everyone to still see it, right? Like
Yeah,
can't you
yeah, it's you can it's on it's I think it's streaming it. It's on Amazon for free, I believe. It's on
okay.
it was or is on Netflix. I mean, it's
Okay.
wherever you get your
Okay.
movies. It's about a brother, it's sort of it's like a meta comedy, so it sort of feels like it's like a sort of docu comedy about a brother and a sister who are me and Hallie who are trying to make a movie in order to get into like Sundance. And secretly, the sister is trying to replace the brother with anyone more famous than him because she feels like his face and who he is and what he represents will never be able to sell a movie. So she's on the DL meeting with anyone she can to get a better actor than him. But then through the process, they realize that they need each other in order to make a movie.
And like Natasha Lyonne is in it and wait, there's a whole bunch of
Yeah,
like
we got a lot. It was like Jesse
fabulous.
Eisenberg was the first person of note that agreed to be in the movie, and his his attachment then got us Ben Stiller to do a day on it, and then Natasha Lyonne, Hallie had done a play with, so she came on. Vanessa Williams was in it, which Michael knew from Ugly Betty. Uh, and then it just started to sort of domino from there. And then we were able to cold offer some people. Like we wanted some funny people like Ralph Macchio or Mamie Gummer was in it. Trying to think of who else. There was a ton of people, but all of those names allowed for our producer Christopher to call on his producer friends who have real money and say, "Hey, this is the cast we have assembled. Are you interested in putting money into this film?" And so that's how that movie got financed.
Right, like kind of start some star casting.
Yeah, some true stunt casting.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then through that, I met the sound mixer on that had a person who was looking to invest in an independent film. Because a lot of these, I don't have these people in my life, but there are people who exist who want to invest their money in art in order to like attend a film festival or to see their name on a screen or to go to a party with Natasha Lyonne or they have other goals beyond just financial return. Um, and if you can find some of those people, they will sometimes give you some money. And a lot of these films were very low budgets, but Grantham and Rose was financed from a contact through our He's Way More Famous Than You sound mixer. And
You
then
never
what
know.
you
Like
never
you
know.
never
And then
know.
and then Woven was financed through connections to the Ethiopian embassy because Salome is Ethiopian and the film is heavily about an Ethiopian family. And so she was able to access money through that path.
I just think it's amazing for people to hear because obviously so many of my listeners are just lovers of all things entertainment, but a lot of them are also people who want to make things and are
Mhm.
at an earlier moment in their career. And I think it can feel so overwhelming if you don't have a connection already. Like even the idea like, okay, so thematically, this is an Ethiopian story. How do I, find someone who might be interested in investing in that? Or like there's just all these different entrees or entryways, I should say, that you just have to be creative about.
Yeah, yeah. And you gotta, I mean, my recommendation to anyone has always been you've got to figure out ways to present your work. Um, Not necessarily meaning that you need to like always do giant readings and invite 300 people and make it a big to-do, but you have always got to have your work be seen by people beyond just you and your computer. Um, and tell everybody that you're doing it and talk about it with everyone because you just never know. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know who you're going to talk to or who would be interested in something because sometimes a story or an element of what you're working on or someone that's involved in it will be really interesting to someone who you never met. And if you don't
Yeah.
share it, you'll never know that.
It's so funny because in some ways, you are a very shy person, and in other ways, you have been so able to talk about the work that you're invested in really passionately. And so, how do you sort of, because I think people feel like very uncomfortable with self-promotion, which is what it might be called, versus, and so how do you balance this idea of like, I don't know, like humility and also I'm working on this thing and I think it has tremendous value and you should come see it and you might get something out of it.
I would say I have not been successful at that because I do agree with you that I think that is a really hard thing, and I think well, I'm getting better at it. Like when my play happened, that I was so excited about for a variety of reasons, but also just because so much of my life and my career has been in the theater. I haven't been a performer in film and TV as much as I have in theater, and
Yeah.
so that was easier to promote and talk about because I had such control and ownership of my voice in that working space. But when it came to film and film projects, I struggled with it. I struggled with Q&As. I struggled with, when we premiered at Slam Dance, he's way more famous than he premiered there. We were tacked onto Sundance in the way that because our cast was so massive that we ended up going to a lot of the Sundance events and we're in the Sundance press and all of that press. I had a very hard time learning how to stand there and talk proudly about my work because I don't talk about myself in that way and I don't talk about things in that way. I
Yeah.
so it just you have to just practice it and do it and you know, listen to what other people are telling you about what you're doing and try to, try to try to believe them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say I remember, COVID feels like yesterday and a million years ago at the same time, but I feel like when people were beginning to like share their lives, their spaces, their behind the scenes,
hmm
Michael, I just remember you guys figuring out like, did you buyer and seller online?
Yeah, we did a bunch of we our apartment turned into like a Zoom movie studio basically. And we
Yes.
we figured out how to do Byron Seller was a one-man show that Michael had done probably 600 times over the course of multiple years about an actor who works in the very real basement of Barbra Streisand and this writer John Toland's made a fictitious story about single employee that might work down there. So it's a very funny and very small story in the sense that he, as a character, is trapped in a basement. And so we figured out a way to, in the corner of our apartment, we don't live there anymore, but we had this apartment with these like great windows to make it sort of give depth. And we figured out how to do multicam. We figured out how to switch between cameras and he knew all the words and knew also where to like play for audience laughs because he was playing to zero people. It was me holding the dog and the cat when we did it live. We ran this thing live as a fundraiser, and yeah, it was this very successful um, live Zoom event with multicam and he was in depth and like there's pictures of it online. It's very cool.
Yeah.
And then we went on to I made a I wrote a play called Nora Highland prior to the pandemic. That's a two-hander about my frustration with the industry's desire to continually celebrate straight actors for their work in queer roles, and that queer actors have to sort of wait until straight actors pass on everything before it comes to them. And I was frustrated with it. So I wrote this play about it. And then during the pandemic, we did readings of it on Zoom, and I realized it could work as a movie in this sort of video conferencing, video chat format. And so I rewrote it as a Zoom movie basically and rehearsed it over the course of a couple of weeks with six actors. The play is two actors playing a bunch of parts, but this was six actors playing a spread of parts. And we shot the movie, and then I spent the next couple of months editing it, and then it ended up premiering at Newfest, which is like New York's big LGBTQ film festival. And so it was celebrated as like a legitimate movie, even though it was just me with a Zoom and figuring out my computer and my space.
I mean, you're so prolific and the play is inspired by true events that you
Yeah.
were referencing that like that was a hit. Like that play was a hit in New York. Um, you probably on any given day could open up your computer and there are many tabs with many projects that you're working on. And I'm wondering, like, I often ask actors about their sort of dressing room rituals or pre-show rituals, but I love talking to writers. And so you live, on both sides of the curtain, as it were. Um, what are things that and rituals and what is your writing discipline? Like how do you approach writing on any given day? And is it consistent or is it always different?
It is definitely not consistent. I after the play ended, um, that was called Inspired by True Events because it was inspired by true events. And so it was a story that I had read in a headline and then didn't read anything else about the actual event. I just sort of imagined what I thought might have happened at this theater. It's a play about an actor who brings body parts to a theater basically and hides them and then performs in his show. And then later at the end, other actors who are in the play find like an arm in a bag, which is very bleak and very dark, but very funny in the version I did. But this has legitimately happened. A man did this, and I say all of this because that was a story based on an outside prompt.
Mhm.
And then I had a period where I just wasn't feeling inspired to write something from my own imagination. And I didn't want to write something inspired by an outside source. And so I had a period of about a year where I didn't really write at all. And then recently, in the last probably 6 or 8 months, I started writing a screenplay that I'm working on now. And that means that usually I wake up in the first couple of hours, if I have the time, are dedicated to that. Michael and I often take what we call work hours from like 9 to noon, and we're both on our computers doing various things, but I'm often writing and working on this screenplay because I work the best in the morning.
Mhm. Do you
Um,
feel like during those times in your life where you're writing less or focused less on it, is that when more acting roles come your way, or is there no connection between those things?
it is, I would say, almost always attached to whether or not I'm in a play. So, like the past year, I did three or four, four plays, and they just some of them overlapped, and I just didn't have a lot of downtime, and so it that was a big reason why I was not writing. And then when Richard II was happening, I things slowed down once the show was running, and then I was able to pick it back up, and then after the new year, I've now been working on it quite a bit.
When you think back to Michael saying, I'm adding this, I love you, I don't know how to help you, but Juilliard really like gave me a leg up in a way that he really believed his career or who he was at that time. it worked for him in the long run.
Hmm.
You feel like, are you glad you did that? Do you think
Like
that,
went to Juilliard?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I'm thrilled. But I mean, I can't lie. It did take a few years to own that feeling because I did not feel it when I got out of the school.
yeah,
Partly because I was 33, I think, when I graduated. And that is a very different age to re-enter the business from a prestigious school like that. It's a different experience than if you're 19 or 20 or 21, which some of my classmates were.
were there
And
any other people your age, or was
yeah,
every,
yeah, yeah.
oh, there
No,
were.
no. Yeah. I when I was in the school, not in my class, but in the division, the age ranged from 16 to like 43 or 4.
That's wild.
So there was quite there, I would say like one fifth of us were over 28, 29.
It's really interesting to think about that, like 16 and 43 in the same program, taking the same classes,
Yeah.
going through the same experience, or being
Yeah.
offered the same experience. I've not really thought about it like that. That's a very unusual thing.
Totally, it was very bizarre. And also I remember when I was in my fourth year, the current first year, there was a 16-year-old young woman in it whose name I cannot remember. But my friend Betty, I turned to her, I was like, we could be her parents. We legitimately, that could be our daughter with our age and her age. But
Yeah,
what it did do that was thrilling is in most university experiences, every play is kind of terrible because no one's cast appropriately.
yeah,
You're just sort of watching people do interesting things for roles they're not right for. But
right.
at Juilliard, I would say every so often a play would be just magical because you had the age dynamics to cast it appropriately. And if the teachers or whomever were going to give an ensemble a perfectly cast show,
Right.
it was thrilling to see when that would happen. And they would sometimes do that, which I thought was really exciting to see. And that's very rare in a educational program like that.
Yeah. Like not everyone had, right. Like this idea, I was just imagining, I remembered our production of Tartuffe where like everyone had baby powder in their hair to be old, and then other people
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to tanning booths to look young. Like absolutely. That's so, well, I am so in awe of your constant focus on ways to tell stories and be productive as an artist, regardless of whether someone has hired you to do it. And you have done so many different kinds of roles. Like it's sort of extraordinary. You know, when I was saying I was only reading like a thumbnail sketch, like regionally, the amount of work you've done is also extraordinary. And the relationships and the love that the theater community has for you. And I think a lot about actors who also get to write. And I feel like a lot of times people are very scared to do something else because they think, wait, no one's going to think of me as an actor anymore. Like, wait, he wrote a play, he's a playwright now. Like, we're so pigeonholed, even with a podcast. I remember doing this great backstage, which had been my Bible when I first started out, was like, can we do a feature on the podcast? And I was like, yes. And the headline of the podcast of the article was like, Alana Levine leaves acting to be a podcast host. And I was like,
Oh,
wow, backstage, like, other than my parents, you were really the most influential in my thing. And like the whole point of the article and my whole point and my hope was like do all the things, because the more you do, the more alive and creative you feel. And this idea of waiting, so to me these conversations just fed my desire to make work as an artist.
yeah.
It had
Yeah.
nothing to do with like, well, I'm going to change lanes now and do something called podcasting. And I just thought people are really quick. And, it is what it is. And nobody died. It was just a headline in backstage. But it
Yeah,
was
but a part
great
of
work.
your heart probably dies. Like
Yeah,
that's a very hard headline, and I'm sorry that that was written. That's not fair, and it's also really reductive. And And uh that's not that's like not nice.
It wasn't nice. And also, literally, if like anyone read it, the entire conversation was the thrill of doing lots of things and how it feeds your art in the end, like the
Yeah.
more you're doing. So I just thought it was so funny because it was literally like opposite day. I was like, is it opposite day? Because the point was Alana Levine decided to also do a podcast, right? Like in
I
her,
mean, it does speak to how meaningful and treasured your podcast is. So it is sort of a backhanded compliment in the sense of
thank
like,
you for
you
it's
know,
a very quick spin, Ryan, and I
well,
really,
it's true. It's like they would not have said that if they didn't think this is really landing for you,
yeah.
you know.
I
Um,
And I think it has, and it is pure joy, and it's 10 years. And I just day after day, I look, and see across from me like some glorious inspirational person. And like I remember like we bumped into each other at the chess opening, and you
yeah.
and Michael and Dominic and I were there, and I was like, you know what? I have admired Ryan for so many years. And I never get a chance to talk to him, so I'm going to steal him. We could have just gone for coffee, but I was like, no, I'm going to share him with the world, God damn it. And
We
thank
should
you.
we should still go for coffee though.
We should definitely still go for
That
coffee,
would
but
be fun.
I just really appreciate your sharing your story. And I wonder because we're coming to an end because I get to go to the opera tonight, which is just a joy of living in New York City and
That's
people
fun.
being generous. Like before we go, because I know you listen to this podcast, and so I just want you to share if there's anything on your mind that you feel like you want people to hear in this world and day. And I'm going to ask you what your little known fact is, but before that, just like what's on your mind.
I just think this is just a very hard business. It is a marathon. You're going to be continually affected by the people around you, the careers around you, the art around you, the politics around you. It's inevitable and it's also helpful. And I think it is just something you have to come to terms with if you want a career and a life in this field. You have to just find ways to be at peace with it because it will never quiet down at any price point. Like our friends that we all know that are immensely successful grapple with things that I'm grappling with at the level I'm at, and then people who are just starting out are grappling with things that they feel are just new to them or only specific to them or will go away when XXX happens. And the truth is I don't think the externals don't go away. So you've got to figure out for yourself how to live your life in a way that is wonderful and fulfilling and joyful, regardless of that other stuff, because that stuff is not ever going to stop.
I think that's right. What do you I know a lot of writers who hate writing. What is your relationship to writing?
I have like right now I'm in a place of hating it. I had a couple of days ago where I was with Michael and we were talking about something and I said that I was really frustrated and I was feeling triggered by it and it was depressing me and I just everything I said was negative and he's like maybe you shouldn't do it right now. Maybe that will create a toxic voice to something that once felt pure to something you were feeling, and now you're going to add on it your own, moment of weakness, I guess, emotional stress or whatever it is. And I went back and forth with whether I agreed with him because I think there's part of me that feels like you have to muscle through these things and part of the joy of writing is having that access because often you don't have a way to physically do something with feelings you have. You have to just internalize them. But if you're a writer, you can put them down. You can express yourself as much as you want, as honestly as you want. And so I decided to disagree with him and I decided to keep working through it. And it's gotten better. And maybe he's right in the sense that I'll look back on the week that I was feeling and erase everything that I wrote, but I think that it is important to push through like a person who is literally running a marathon. You have to keep pushing through. You can't just stop because it's hard or it hurts.
Right. And also, not that he was playing devil's advocate, but it's also sometimes the idea of someone like going, well, then don't. You're like, no, 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 I didn't say I didn't want to. I'm
Yeah, yeah. But he's also like loves me and he's trying to like
yeah,
and he knows me. I mean, we've been together 17 years now, so he can just see he's seen all sides of me and so
right,
he's not he's completely accurate and right, but I have to learn ways of challenging myself to not fall into habits.
right. But he doesn't want you to suffer because he loves you. And
Yeah.
that's a beautiful thing. Well, I don't want you to suffer either. And I hope that conversation was not that for you because it was pure joy for me. Um, Before I let you go, is there a little known fact that you can share about you?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about this because I was trying to think of what, and then I decided to step away from anything related to what we do and what your podcast is about. And I thought about how when I was 11 or either between the ages of 8 and 11, I can't remember, and there's no footage of it to validate that this happened, but it did happen and it was on TV. But I won a um, invention contest where I invented a hanger. So like a hanger has clips for like pants
Yeah, yeah.
to dangle. So like I invented this thing that was like a plastic hanger and I duct taped all these clothespins to it and it allowed for scarves and hats and gloves and it was a completely like winter related hanger for just your winter items. And because it was like it was a different version of a hanger that did already exist. And I won. And I got to go on public access television and I received a $50 check. And then, much to my, uh,
I don't like where this is going.
I have nobody thought to patent it or like no one in my adult life thought to do anything with it or check it. Nothing happened. And then, of course, these styles of hangers blew up. And I'm sure maybe they were already down the pike gonna happen, but I did go on TV holding my hanger, and I believe that there is a court that would honor my 8-year-old self and my duct taped hanger and award me my money.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the way that woman Joy, like she came up with some sort of mop that ended up, becoming a really big deal. An all-in-one. You could like squeeze out the water from the mop in one unit.
Oh yeah,
And
the musical. They made a
yes,
musical about it.
and
Yeah, yeah.
she went on Home Shopping Network, and I feel like next time I see you, you're going to be on Home Shopping Network.
With my duct taped hanger for Christmas items. Like I still think about it. I think about it at least once a month. I'm like, how did nobody patent
Where
that?
are the grown-ups? Where
Yeah,
are
what
the
did they plopped me on TV. Granted, it's public access, but they plopped me on it with my check for $50 and my thing. And then that was that.
That was that. You know what? That might be one of the best little known facts in 500 episodes. So you might have won. If there was a dollar amount to give you for winning best fact, if my listeners send just $1, I think Brian might be very happy. All right, you. Well, let's do this in person without
Okay.
microphones. I cannot wait. Thank you for being on the show. I'm such a
Thanks,
fan of
Lana.
yours as a talent and as a human. And thank you for all
Likewise.
the
This
goodness
means a
you've
lot.
done.
Thank you for having me.
It means a lot to me. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.